understand that it's been almost 2 years now since the end of the war in Sri Lanka. Is the European Parliament satisfied with the post-war scenario in the country so far?
I think in terms of what we've seen on this visit, I think that I think we have grounds for confidence that a post-war sort of resettlement, certainly in terms of the physical side of that, people being able to return to their homes and so on, is underway. I think the question for us is about what are the other measures, the confidence building measures, dealing indeed with some of the political problems which were part of the sort of the reason for that conflict. So those are some of the questions that we've been raising, with ministers and others that we've met on this occasion.
Do you see more visits from your delegation coming back into the country, just to keep a tab of what's happening or what the Sri Lankan government is doing where resettlement of the IDPs are concerned?
I think we are certainly interested in returning as a delegation for a whole set of reasons. One is certainly we want to see what progress is being made on resettlement, a whole set of the development projects indeed that the government certainly was telling us are in progress, that they're looking for funding for. So that side of things is very important for us. It's not the only reason to be back in Sri Lanka. I mean, we're also interested in the economic development, social development, etc. of the whole island and the ongoing relationships between the European Union and Sri Lanka. But certainly that would be if we were coming back, that the issues around resettlement, regeneration are things that, yes, we'd obviously want to come back to.
The EU just recently they banned the LTT as a terrorist organization. Yet a lot of pro-LTT propaganda is continuing in the European countries. Why does the European governments give room for these organizations to carry out pro-terror propaganda activities on their soil when they are already banned?
I think, it's difficult to say because obviously I don't speak for the member states. I mean, national governments make their own policy decisions about what is allowed, what is legitimate protest, etc. within their own member states. And I think that for quite a lot of governments it will be that providing the demonstrations do not advocate terrorism, do not advocate armed resistance in a possibility where there is political movement, political settlement, then governments will allow protest. I think in terms of if it's more the question about fundraising to buy arms or whatever, every single government would be agreed that that is something that they would be stepping in on and indeed trying to prevent that.
Does the European Union recognize, or European Parliament recognize, the transnational government set up by the Tamil groups?
The European Parliament hasn't even discussed the question about the transitional government. And again, I think this is much more a question about how member states will respond to that. But that, as I say, that hasn't been an element of discussion for us either within the delegation or within the Parliament. So that's something which, as I say, it's a member state.
Do you all expect this discussion to come up anytime soon? Are you all going to discuss it with anybody?
But, we won't be doing that, I think, as a delegation unless it is particularly brought to us. Either, whether that will be the ambassador of Sri Lanka or whether it will be sort of particular human rights groups or whatever that want to pursue this within the Parliament. But it's not something that as a Parliament, as I say, we have discussed that we have taken any sort of position on whatsoever.
Right. The UN Human Rights Council, they're meeting again in March, and there are reports that there might be a resolution passed against Sri Lanka. Is Europe going to, vote for this? Are they going to support for a resolution against Sri Lanka once again?
I think it will be a question of, individual member state governments will make that decision within the UN. The European Union as a whole is not represented within the UN. It's still very much a national government situation on that. My understanding is that also at that Human Rights Council there certainly will be at least one case brought about long-term detention in Sri Lanka, which is something that, I would like to see that the government really here taking notice of, because those are important issues in whichever country in the world you are. So, that will be something. But as I say, the other side of it, it will not be the European Parliament or the European Union that will make the decision for the UN Human Rights Council. That is purely national governments. And at the moment, I have no idea what they will be doing within that Human Rights Council meeting.
Right. What's your view about the human rights situation in Sri Lanka right now? Because a few Western countries were quite critical about the human rights situation during the final stages of the war, even the months which followed after that. Are you all satisfied now?
Well, even the European Parliament's resolutions, from the period of the sort of final months of the war and indeed straight after it, were critical on issues about sort of access for the media, access for international organisations to really be able to see what was happening there. Because I think it's one of those things as well that if people don't have what they feel are independent bodies providing them with information, then that allows all sorts of stories to spread, whatever your political perspective. So that was something certainly that the Parliament wanted to see, and we said so. We've also, made it very clear in past resolutions that there are issues in terms of human rights where, yes, we would want to see things move. I've mentioned today, issues around long-term detention. I think one of the other questions that's been raised with us quite a lot on this visit is what are we doing, what's happening about information, where information is available on disappearances, on family tracing, some of those issues, which I think, that if the government really sort of made things work on that, and certainly, they've indicated that they want to take action on that, that would be really important for people feeling that there is a process of change going on here, that people really can feel confident that they feel a sense of belonging within the country, that this works then for everybody. So those sorts of issues, yes, are important. We would hope to see sort of, presumably it will also come in the lessons learned committee report. Movement on that would be extremely positive, because there are other things going on here which are really good, are really making progress. It's a pity that those things haven't moved along with it.
Right. What's your view about the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission? Since it's a locally appointed commission, do you all have full faith in this commission, or are you all going to continue calling for an international, delegation to arrive in the country to probe into these sort of issues which you all have raised?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will always be questions about what happens in the final stages of a conflict, and that countries come to terms with that in their own way. But yes, I mean, I think it won't be at all surprising if people continue to ask and, to call for action on that. And that's certainly something, that again, in the past, the Parliament, in the final stages of the conflict and indeed straight afterwards, we were asking for international, sort of investigation. On the other hand, if the Lessons Learned Committee, and really sort of comes up with things which are positive, which people feel, are going to be moving things forward, addressing maybe some of the sort of the political questions that people feel, dealing with issues for people about what's happened to their loved ones, whatever side of the conflict they were on, because there have been disappearances, as we know, in all communities. I think then, that will reassure people that reconciliation really is part of the process, and not simply just trying to, just move forward without really taking account of a whole set of things across different communities that's happened in the past. So we look forward to the publication of the report in May from the Lessons Learned Committee.
Okay, Ms. Lambert, in case if you all are not satisfied with the final report which does come out this year, are you all going to push for an international probe once again? Are you all going to have discussions with the government?
I think let's wait and see what the report says. And then if the Parliament feels that it wants to reevaluate that process, and then then we'll take action then. But let's see what the report is, that final report is. As I say, what we've been hearing here from a wide variety of organisations and different voices is that people felt that the interim report had some very, very positive measures in it, very positive proposals. So they're looking, for the full implementation of that, as the President had said would happen, has a committee to do that, and then let's look at the next stage of the report.
My final question, what are your views about the UN panel which has been appointed by UN Chief Ban Ki-moon? Do you all think this was a wise move? Do you all think it was necessary to begin with?
I think that, you know, that Ban Ki-moon was in a difficult position. That, you know, particularly I think that because of the Human Rights the UN Human Rights Committee's decision that it wouldn't actually sort of take action at that particular point, I think that for a lot of people that meant a feeling of there were so many unresolved issues, so many unresolved questions, and therefore to try and move forward on something else. I think it will be interesting to see what comes from his commission and to see also where that then matches with the Lessons Learned Commission. And ideally that's what we get, is something where, you know, that the situation in Sri Lanka, the people in Sri Lanka are also coming to similar sorts of conclusions. So, but as I say, you know, we look forward to the report from the Lessons Learned Commission, and we'll see. Then we'll see.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, thank you.